Welcome to another episode of Call Me Mr. Broadstreet. This is Ed here, of course, and I've got two wonderful guests with me today. We're going to go ahead and share some memories of Denny Laine. I've got, of course, we've got Harry Benson and Dan Ealey, aka Dan the Man. So, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. I'm glad we
Thank
can
you.
share a lot of good memories of Denny. As we were talking a little bit earlier before we began. So the order we're going to kind of go in, we'll go ahead and go with Dan first, and then Harry, and then myself. Now, normally I know, as I said before, usually we would do, some sort of questions and interviews, but this is a little bit different kind of memories, different memories of Denny Laine. We definitely miss him. So I'm just going to pose the same question to both of you. Dan, I'll go ahead and start with you. So kind of just real quick, how did you become kind of a Beatles fan, and even more importantly, a Denny Laine and Wings fan?
Well, I was at my movie theater on February 9th of 64 with my Cub Scout group when one of the kids before the movie asked me if I was going to watch the Beatles tonight. And my response was one I've never had to utter again, which was, "What's the Beatles?" And he said, "Just watch Ed Sullivan tonight." So, like 83 million, however many it was, others, did watch Ed Sullivan that night, and life as we knew it at the time changed the next day. So that got me started on the Beatles. And then on Denny, I knew who Denny was because I'd seen him in some of the live shows on TV over the years from the UK with the Moody Blues. But it was 1974 when McCartney and Wings came to Lebanon, Tennessee, outside of Nashville to record, rehearse, and relax, that I found my way to the farm and pretending to be a reporter. And the first person I encountered when I got out of my car was Denny Laine. And I got out with my bass guitar, and here you can see me standing with Denny and Denny playing my bass there. So that was the origins of Denny Laine and my first meeting.
Wow, very well, very, very cool. As immortalized, and of course, Junior's Farm and everything. So Harry, we're going to go to you next. Kind of the same question, just how did you become a Beatles fan, and also more importantly, you're a Denny Laine fan?
Well, for me, I was introduced to the Beatles through Wings. Um, I was born in '66 when Revolver came out, but I didn't know nothing about the Beatles. It was my brother who, because with a little luck came out. London Town is my favorite album. That's the album that I became a fan of Wings, and I was listening to that, and he says, "Well, that guy Paul McCartney. He's a Beatle." And I said, like, Dan, what's a Beatle? And I was like, so he had the red and the blue albums, and he introduced me to the Beatles that way through the red and blue albums. But it was through Wings because I didn't know Paul McCartney was in the band before that. And actually, I didn't know who Paul McCartney was. I just knew the band Wings. And so that later period of Wings was my favorite, is my favorite time of Wings. I love them all, but that's my introduction to Wings and to the Beatles was through Wings.
Excellent. Yeah, well, no, I think I'll add my little bit to it. Really, just fellow Gen X myself, 75 vintage. Probably a lot more through my dad with his Beatles collection, and then of course some Wings in there as well over the years, and kind of as I think a lot of MTV and stuff like that with Paul being on there. Having seen Paul live as my first rock concert, July 4th, 1990, at the age of 14, and then really that drove me into investigating the back catalog, not only of the Beatles, but of course Wings, and of course Denny being a huge part of it. So we're going to go ahead and share just some stories and memories and everything of Denny some more. So, Dan, what other stories do you have of Denny? I know you said, when you visited the farm, go ahead and describe that to us a little bit, or really just any stories you feel like you want to bring up.
Well, when I arrived at the farm, I didn't know at the time I was going to be hanging out with them for 3 weeks. So I would go down every day and hang out and hear Wings rehearsing in the garage and hang out with Denny, Jeff Britton, the drummer, and the new lead guitar player, Jimmy McCullough. And then eventually I would end up seeing Paul, meeting Paul. And on his birthday in '74, I was asked to work the gate by the band when I, at a party Paul was having, a small party down by the pond at the farm. And I flagged Roy Orbison and Chet Atkins and Jerry Reed. And then as the party wound down, Paul walked through the field and came and escorted me down to the party. And it was me and Roy Orbison, Paul and Linda, Denny, Jeff, and Jimmy. So that was quite an event. Plus, at that party, Paul was wearing a shirt I'd sent him a few days earlier that I'd handed off through the band to him, and he had that shirt on. I would stand out in the field and I would listen to My Love, Jet, Band on the Run, Little Woman Love, and I heard this song I didn't know, I'd never heard before, that they seemed to be spending a lot of time on. And I ended up finding out in October, when the song premiered, October 25th of '74, that the song I'd been hearing that I didn't know was Junior's Farm.
Well, great. Amazing track, of course, as we know, with the one-hand clapping re-release. And we'll go ahead and, Harry, just some memories you've also got of Denny, and as we're going through.
Oh, I met Denny, Brian. I met him March the 31st, 2017. That was my first meeting with him. No, only meeting with him, but I've had been following him for years. It was funny how he was playing at the High Dive Club in Gainesville, Florida, with the Criers, and Steve Hawley was on drums, and I was so happy because when I got to the site, I had a parking spot right in front of the venue. So, I didn't have to park a mile away, whatever. I had left work and went there. Well, when I was getting out of my car, I didn't see the curb and I fell. And I dislocated my right pinky finger. It was sticking straight out. Well, who was walking up? It wasn't Denny. It was his girlfriend at the time, Elizabeth. And her assistant came up. She's trying to lift this guy who's about 300 pounds off the ground because I fell. I had my camera with me. I had the albums with me that were going to get signed. And it was funny because she was trying to lift me up, and then some college kids came by and picked me up, and got me up. And she says, "Look," she said, "I feel bad for you." She says, "I'm going to tell Denny about this." And I said, "Well, I don't want to bother him. It's something silly." But my finger was sticking straight out, and they had called the ambulance on it, and I didn't know they had called the ambulance. So they came out, and I said, "Well," I said, "I paid $40, and I've been waiting to see Denny for 40 years." And I said, I'm staying. So when I got inside, she told Denny, she said, "Oh, there's the guy with the dislocated finger." So he got out from the table there where he was signing autographs, came around and came up, talked to me. And I tell you what, it felt like I knew him knew him personally for years. He was just so approachable, so nice. And I didn't realize how short he was either, because when he came up to me, I was like, "Oh man, he's short." But I thanked him and all that, and he shook my hand with the dislocated finger, and he wouldn't let go, and it was throbbing with pain. I was so thrilled. I was so thrilled to meet Denny. and then him giving me 5-10 minutes of his time to talk to me, and saying, he said, you need to go to hospital. He kept saying that, you need to go to hospital. He said, I'm going to be up on stage worried about you the whole time. And I said, don't worry about me. Just, I'm here to see you and the band, and I'm going to be happy. And I did. I sat through that whole thing. He signed the album. He signed the Holidays album for me. Coordinate myself here. And Steve, like I showed you earlier, Steve Holly signed. Can't see it because he wrote it in silver, but Holidays underneath there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was great show. And when he left, he walked right past us through the audience, and Steve saw me and came up and gave me a big hug. He was all sweaty and smelled like beer, and he says, "Man, I love you," and then walked off. But that was the best night of my life, meeting Denny that night, and him taking the time, 5-10 minutes talking to me and worried about me, and shows what kind of a person he was, and he wasn't all airs or anything like that.
No, definitely not. And I mean, I think for my experience going a little bit further. So February 10th, 2023, got to see him at the why am I blanking on the name of the place now? Down in Cape Cod, the music room down in Cape Cod. So basically, my stepmom got some tickets. Says, "Hey, do you want to? It's a Friday night or whatever it was. Do you want?" I'm like, "Of course, yeah, I'd love to." So went there. I went to a place I usually go, Spinnaker Records in Hyannis, Mass. As I was saying to you earlier, Harry, I'm flipping through. I'm like, maybe an album is too much. I wanted to get a CD, hoping to get an autograph. And I would have been fine either way if you said yes or no. I mean, first of all, just seeing the show, an amazing show he put on, and definitely, the stories and kind of weaving everything in. And I just remember, first of all, the only album, the CD I could find in the CD rack was Wildlife. I'm like, okay, cool. He's on that. I remember afterwards, with a little bit of liquid courage, I wasn't driving that night, luckily, went up, and I'm like, okay, well, I asked one of the management people, say, yeah, I think he'll be signing back, but, just keep cool, stand cool for a few minutes. I did. He comes out, and me too. I was very surprised. I'm not a very tall person myself. How short he was, maybe just a little bit shorter than me. We got to do a photo together, and then I brought out the copy of Wildlife. I have a pen in my hand, my hand's shaking, and he already had the Sharpie out. He was already ready with the photo and everything. And he got to sign. I like yours, how he got to elongate the signature, but I mean, it's one of my most treasured autographs. And like you said, just the character he was, it did really feel like, he was very happy to be engaged with the fans, and just very much down to earth, everything like that. Dan, I'm sure that must have been your experience first meeting him. And did you get to meet them any time after that? Kind of after that, time during Junior's Farm, did you get to meet Denny?
Oh yeah, I've been friends with Denny for 49 years. I was in the UK in 1995, and he invited me. He called me on the phone and invited me to come to his show. And then all through the years, I've basically kept in contact with him and had a lot of phone calls with him, go to his shows, and became great friends with him. And I'll show you a few things here while we've got time here. This is from 1974 down at the farm. And this is a card that they signed, and they would give out to music industry people while they were in Nashville. That's signed by Linda, the one at the top, and it's signed by Denny here at the bottom. And then through the years, he signed London Town, back to the Wildlife, back to the Egg, Band on the Run. So he signed a lot of things for me. Here, this particular poster, he signed to the Fake Photo Man for me. And I've got a Christmas card from him. He sent me a Christmas card one year. I think this was in 95. that he sent me a Christmas card. And so I kept pretty good touch with him through the years, and we had a lot of fun together. I had a bottle of wine made up here, and he got the first bottle, and this one's not the signed one, but he signed the first bottle for me that has me and him on it.
Wow.
Now you can see a lot of this on YouTube by just typing in Dan Ealey, Denny Laine, or Dan Ealey, Paul McCartney. You can see a lot of the stories. The biggest story probably of my 49 years is that this is my Rickenbacker bass, and Denny suggested that I give it to Paul, said Paul would love it. So I gave this Rickenbacker in 1974 to Paul McCartney. He kept it 3 weeks, and he decided that it would mean more to me if he kept it and played it and then returned it than if he just permanently deprived me of it. So that was thanks to Denny, and I have this bass back today. 50 years later, I still have this bass.
Wow, that's really that is some cool, nice memorabilia, and just some nice that you were, in contact with him for so long, and speaks again to the type of person he was. I'm curious about the London Town photo when he says to the fake photo man. Is there some sort of special meaning behind that, or is that just like an inside joke? Or
well, no, you have to understand when they showed up in 1974 at Junior's Farm, Wings had never performed in America, and in fact, Henry McCullough and Denny Seibel had left the band, and Paul and Denny and Linda went on to Nigeria to record Band on the Run. When they came back, they recruited a new guitarist, who was Jimmy McCullough, and a new drummer, who was Jeffrey Britton. And the first trip to America was to Nashville. And I was the first fan to hear Wings play live in America, because I was there outside the garage recording them. And I have 2 hours of Wings rehearsing, doing My Love, Band on the Run, Jet, Little Woman Love, Hi, 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 Soily. And so what he's referencing there is, I pretended to be a reporter to get in by contacting Melody Maker magazine, telling them I'm a reporter, and I wanted to represent Melody Maker magazine to cover Paul and Wings during their visit to Nashville. And I got the letter from them. And so when I show up at the farm, I said, I'm Dan Ealey with Melody Maker magazine. And that's what he's referring to there. At one concert, after he played a song, I was in the audience, and he said, there's a guy in the audience tonight who showed up at the farm pretending to be a photographer or press or something, but there he is, and we haven't been able to get rid of him for 40 years. So I would tease Denny when I would see him. In fact, I would usually wear this shirt that has me and Denny on it, and he would always get a laugh out of it. And that's what he meant by saying to the fake photo man, press man. That was what he was referencing on that writing on the poster.
wow, that's a really, well, first, that's a really cool story. And I mean, just imagine, you couldn't do that today. You couldn't do that with naturally the amount of security or anything around any level of celebrity. But man, thank you for sharing that. And I kind of wanted to go through and see maybe another question I'm just thinking of off the top of my head, more or less, is kind of not just obviously Denny the celebrity, but Denny the person. I mean, Harry, I'll go to you first. That story was so nice with the with obviously what happened with your finger was not so nice, but
Yeah.
but kind of that they took the type of care. And what do you kind of miss about Denny, the human being? I mean, that seems to talk a lot about Denny the human being.
Oh yeah, he was an everyday man. I mean, he was a superstar. With the Moody Blues and with Wings, and on his own right, He was a star, but he didn't act like a star. He had compassion. He cared about his fans. Uh, and that's what I got off of him, And like I said, when I first met him, I thought like Dan knows him for 49 years, contacting him through phone calls and seeing him at shows and stuff. But I met him that one time, but it felt like I'd known him for years, and like an old friend that you seen from school, and it's like, hey, and that's the vibe I got from him. And then his girlfriend at the time, his wife, his widow, Elizabeth, she gets so much crap from from groups on Facebook. But I tell you what, she went out of her way for me to help me too. I give her a shout out. She set it up for Denny to be, give me some time to talk to him. I didn't ask for it. She did it on her own. She called the ambulance. She was a sweet person trying to pick me up off the ground. So those are the type of people that they were. I mean, they weren't snobbish or anything like that. And that's one thing I'm going to miss. I miss his Elizabeth's always sharing memories on Instagram of Denny. And it's really sweet, but you can see how he is, in his everyday life. He's not pretentious or anything like that. And that's what I'm going to miss about him, the most. And he seemed to be that way even during the Wings days, in the height of his fame there with Wings and stuff. He's always been the same person. That's the feeling I get. Especially, because, he's been friends with Dan for 50 years. That's the type of person he is, and Jeff Britton is the same way too with Dan. So.
Yeah. And I guess the same question, Dan. I mean, more so than, like I said, obviously we all think we know these people because of the celebrity, the connections, but, some more human moments, if you feel like sharing, or some of the things that intangible, I guess.
Well, there was a lot. I mean, he would call me at the spur of the moment, unannounced, and we always it was always some laughs and jokes going on. I was backstage with him at a show, and he goes to the piano, starts jamming on the piano. He didn't know I played piano in addition to bass, and so I go over the upper end of the piano and I'm playing with him. And he was amazed when he stood up. He said, "You do play, don't you?" And then we were singing Picasso's last words. I mean, having a drink and singing that, and just, it was always about fun. My phone would ring. It rang one night. I knew it was him, and the voice on the other end of the phone says, "You're a Wings fan." And I took that to, I think Denny sometimes would like for me to be a more of a Moody Blues fan. And I said, "Well, yes, Denny, I mean, that's correct. I am a Wings fan." So the next time I went to see him, I took a Moody Blues album and had him sign it. But we just had a lot of laughs, a lot of fun, and we enjoyed each other's company. We shared stories, and I was around him a lot at the 3 weeks in Nashville, and then through his touring years, I would be backstage, or I would meet him afterwards, and it's just hard to believe that he's gone. I spoke to him last on August 19th of last year. And he was going to book a show here. He told me to book a show here for him locally. When I booked a show for him in 2019 here, when he came down and posed with my Rickenbacker bass. So the amazing thing for me is, with all those guys, Denny, Jeff, Jimmy, and Paul, is that I was able to maintain this 49 years of a relationship. And I told him, well, I was just a fan, but like in 2022, there I am holding the picture of me and Paul, and that's Paul outside the arena in Knoxville pointing at me, and then he speaks to me from the stage during the concert. So it's just been a fabulous journey with Denny and all the guys in Wings.
Wow, amazing. Yeah, I can echo that, I guess. It's just my story, my time, knowing him. Well, like you said, Harry, it felt like I'd known him, even though, I mean, it was my only time meeting him. The same vibe, just definitely the same vibe, the same very friendly, down to earth. And one thing I kind of forgot to add to the story earlier about the autograph, I'm pretty sure it was Liz I was talking to. So I remember one of the hints I've always had whenever I go to like a Comic-Con or convention, I always also want to be sure to be nice to, the assistants, the people running the event, that type of thing as well. And I turned to her and said, "Oh, it's just such an amazing show. What was your name?" And I think she said Liz, and without registering, without realizing, but said, "Thank you. It was such a great honor." She went ahead, took the picture, and I just even the people around him. And just, I remember hearing the news, I think a few days before or a week before, kind of giving a little bit of money to the fund to help out with medical expenses, and thinking, okay, I just missing Denny, and just knowing, even if he was around, even if he wasn't going to tour again, if he was just going to, maybe just play some very local things near his house, wanting him to recover. And then I remember hearing it, and then pretty much at work that day when I was in office, one of my staff asking me, "Oh, are you okay?" I'm like, "Oh, not really." It's definitely, it's a loss to the Beatles family. I don't know if you want to speak some more to that, if you feel comfortable with that.
Well, I've followed, I followed his illness, by the post, that Liz was posting on Instagram. Um, and it was very sad because I know he had COVID, um, I think twice. And then, and then it affected his lungs. And even my wife, she would ask me, she goes, because she didn't get to go to the show with me, she had to work, but she would always ask about Denny. How is he doing today? Any updates on Denny? And I said, well, he has his good days and his bad days, but it was hard. It was sad. And then on the 50th anniversary of Band on the Run, which is that was released in the U.S. on the 5th of December, is when he passed, and that's his favorite album. I've heard him say that at the show I was at. He Somebody asked him, and he goes, he said, "Well, what's your favorite album?" He says, "Band on the Run," and he says, "That's my favorite." He said it's hard, but he said that's the one he's most proud of, and because it was just him, Paul, and Linda working on that album, and so to die on that day, uh, I don't know. It's sort of like when John Adams and Thomas Jefferson died on the 4th of July. It was just that type of thing, and it upset me. And I know, like Chloe, she was very close to Denny also, and that's why it's hard for her to be here because,
of course,
yeah, but it was so sad just following it, and he just got married again. Early July or June of that year,
yes,
down in the Keys, and yeah, it's just he seemed happy. He seemed happy, and things were going well for him. He did the Paul McCartney tribute show with Ann Wilson from Heart, and he had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction a few years before that. A lot of things were good for him. So, but it's sad how he went like that. It was hard.
Yeah, I think I'm sure a lot of us obviously wanting him to be here to spend more time, or even for him to really spend more time with Liz, with his family, with his close friends, Dan, such as yourself, and and everything. I didn't know if you wanted to also add some more to that if you wished, or trying to be
Well,
respectful, obviously.
I talked to Denny before he went out on the tour, and he had expressed some concerns about the COVID issue.
Mhm.
And he told me that he had talked to Paul and that Paul had told him, you need to get vaccinated if you go out. And I knew he had some concerns about it, and I knew he was suffering some issues for quite a while. I knew he had struggled with that, and I was aware of it. We were all hoping the best for him, but they had asked me to handle all the condolence cards for him after he passed, and also the get well cards. So I handled all that coming in and getting it to him. Um, Regardless, it was a real shock. Um, we hoped that he would be able to participate some way, maybe in the 50th anniversary this year of Junior's Farm, but unfortunately, it just wasn't able to be. Uh, I was invited to the funeral service, but I wasn't able to attend. But we all love Denny, miss Denny, and uh, we wish the best for Liz. And one thing we know for sure is Denny will be remembered forever.
Yeah.
Here's a photo that Denny signed for me at the farm. Point out of the picture of me with him at the farm, and he wrote, "Dan the man, old friends." It was actually Denny who coined that phrase, Dan the man, and they all called me that. Jeff Britton calls me Dan the man. They all called me Dan the man, and but I think of him often. I listen to his music most every day. The song right now off off One Hand Clapping that has been hanging with me quite a bit is I'm a Bluebird.
Mm.
And of course, I can hear Denny. I can hear Denny's vocals and harmonies on that song, and I miss him a lot. So I know all these fans do too.
Yeah.
Yeah, we yeah, that's the truth. I'll add a nice little postscript. So when I got to go to the Fest in New Jersey back in February, I think Charles Rosenay, I think we all know Charles if we don't know him in person or have heard of him. He comes to me and he says, "Hey, I've got a really nice photo, and I love this photo. Not signed obviously, but I just love this right here.
Yeah, the
This
Venus and Mars.
yeah, the 75 photo, and he's just sorry, the glare is getting there a little bit. Just looking so relaxed and kind of a very very cool photo. That leather jacket, kind of bomber look that was probably popular in the 70s and 80s type of thing. That very, and I think all of this really sums him up well. I'm not sure what to quite add, but yeah, it's been hard to believe that it's been, as we're taping this now, about 8 months or so,
Yeah.
since we all received that. I guess we'll just wrap it up with kind of any final thoughts, and of course, if you feel like you want to certainly promote anything, you're more than welcome to. Harry, I'll go ahead and start with you first.
Actually, I wanted to ask Dan to tell the story about the Elvis wine.
Sure.
Okay, so look, when I would go visit Denny, for some reason, I started picking up a bottle of Graceland Elvis wine that had Elvis on the bottle. And I would take it in and give Denny this bottle of wine. And he wasn't particularly fond of it, but that didn't stop me from always taking it to him. And every show that I went to, I would either take it, or if anyone contacted me and said they're going to see Denny, I would say, "Hey, stop by a liquor store and pick up a bottle of Graceland Elvis wine." And they said, "Well, why?" And I said, "Well, he doesn't really like it, but he knows that I'm behind the you giving it to him." And so when I went to see him last on February 3rd of last year, when I presented him with a bottle of wine, you can see this on YouTube. Again, you can go to YouTube, put in Dan Ealey, Ealey, Denny Laine, or Dan Ealey, Paul McCartney, and you'll see a lot of these videos pop up. And Denny thinks I have a bottle of Elvis wine. And when I pull the bottle out and hand it to him, it's the one that I showed you that has me and Denny on it. And he was pretty shocked by that. And he had quite a bit to say about it. And I asked him to sign that bottle for me, which of course I have. So that's the story behind Denny being presented with bottles of Elvis wine.
Wow, that's a nice story. I like that, Dan. Thank you for sharing that, and obviously, link to your site as well, of course. And I just I just wanted to thank both of you gentlemen today. Harry, thank you so much for sharing that story from 2017. I'm grateful to have had you on and to be able to discuss this. Dan, thank you so much for coming on. It was really an honor to have both of you and be able to kind of share a little bit of memories. And again, it's unfortunately it's a loss in the Beatles family, but it's also nice to have some of those memories. I just want to thank both of you gentlemen. I guess that's it for the show, but you know what? I will see everybody in the next video. And again, just Harry and Dan, thank you so much for sharing your memories, taking some time out this afternoon. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us on.
My pleasure.
Thank you both.